Donald Trump appears so eager to escape his problems at home that he's taken off on a state visit to the UK. But the issues he hoped to leave behind have followed him overseas. From ongoing scandals to troubling economic news and even growing scrutiny of his administration's actions, all of it has arrived with him. And UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer isn't letting it go unnoticed. We'll break down the surprising and significant move Prime Minister Starmer just made, and why it's turning into a moment of real humiliation for Trump. But before we dive in, if you could leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. It truly helps support our work. Now, following the state dinner last night, Trump and the Prime Minister appeared together at a press conference. And as expected, Trump had a meltdown. Let's get into it with this first clip.
Great process going. And inflation is virtually non-existent. As you know, we're taking in trillions of dollars from tariffs, and they've been so incredible for our country, so incredible. We're keeping our companies happy. We're keeping them solid and sane, and they're very, very thrilled at what's happened. They can't even believe it. And
Donald Trump continues to insist that inflation isn't a problem, but people across the country are feeling the rising costs every single day. Instead of helping, he leans into tariffs, policies that act as hidden taxes on working families, while giving one of the largest tax cuts in U.S. history to the wealthy. That's what this administration is really about, making sure the rich benefit while everyone else struggles. On top of that, Trump pushed a new claim saying that $17 trillion is being invested in America. But even Fox News host Brian Kilmeade appeared doubtful when hearing that figure, raising serious questions about Trump's credibility.
The country was dead 1 year ago, and now you have the hottest country anywhere in the world, and it's true. And we'll have more than $17 trillion invested in our country this year. 17 trillion, which is many, many times what we had last year, and we're only in our just about almost ninth month. It's moving along quickly. It's amazing. I was saying we're in our third month, our fourth month, our fifth month, but we're at, it's going to be over $17 trillion. No country has ever had anything like that, even close.
Even Brian Kilmeade couldn't hide his doubt, noting that it's hard to believe Donald Trump's claims about massive investments ever turning into real projects. We've seen this pattern before, big promises without real results. Reports from past meetings even suggested that major tech leaders were uncertain about what numbers to present, since much of it seemed more like political theater than reality. At the end of the day, it all looked like another attempt by Trump to dress up his agenda and sell it as something bigger than it really is, especially when promoting his latest bill.
Aspect of the bill, it was I call it the big, beautiful bill, the great, big, beautiful bill. We got so much, the largest bill ever passed in the history of our country. In fact, so big that we really don't have to pass too much anymore. We can just do this for 4 years, implement. You know, I like to implement because the bills are wonderful, but you have to implement.
It is funny that Donald Trump is bragging about this legislation, considering that it is so unpopular, so terrible. It's the worst bill in modern American history. It's so bad that Donald Trump and Republicans have quite literally changed the branding because they don't care that the contents is pour no. He's gonna a bunch of people over. No. What they're worried about is the name. It's such classic Trump to focus on the branding above all else. But that is not going to save him. Donald, you are running an administration that is fundamentally hurting everyone who is not in the top 0.0001% of Americans. And you're going to pretend that that's not the case by saying, I'm advocating on behalf of the forgotten man. I'm standing up for people and you know, the children. which is just not true. Donald Trump's administration has put more people in pain than any other in history. And it's not just here in America. It's also abroad, where Donald Trump and our tax dollars are supporting a genocide, a starvation of people in Gaza. And it is why this move by Keir Starmer, humiliating Donald Trump and pointing out how complicit he is really blowing up in his face. Starmer to recognize Palestinian state after Trump's state visit. Other nations, including France, Australia, and Canada, plan to take the step at next week's UN summit. Keir Starmer will reportedly recognize a Palestinian state over the weekend after Donald Trump concludes his state visit to the UK. The Prime Minister has previously said he plans to recognize Palestinian statehood before the UN General Assembly in New York this month if Israel does not meet a series of conditions to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza. High-level meetings at the UN summit involve world leaders begin on the 23rd of September. According to the Times, Starmer has held off on formally announcing the UK will recognize a Palestinian state until after Trump leaves for fear it could dominate a Thursday news conference the two men plan to hold. The Prime Minister has found himself at odds with the U.S. administration over this move, which is opposed to giving official recognition of the state. However, other nations, including France, Australia, and Canada, said they plan to take the same step at the UN gathering. Of course, the United States should take steps toward recognizing a Palestinian state. And yes, Democratic leaders across the country should be advocating for this. At a time when we are already speaking about the tragedies of gun violence and political violence here at home, where children's lives have been changed forever simply by going to school, we must also recognize the humanity of children in Gaza. What they are experiencing is also political violence. If we are serious about condemning injustice, our actions must reflect that. It is not enough to oppose harmful immigration raids, which themselves are acts of political violence. It is not enough to call for common sense reforms to address the epidemic of gun violence in America. It is not enough to push back on unauthorized military actions abroad. We must also be willing to say clearly that the Palestinian people deserve humanity, dignity, and the right to live in peace. Full stop. This moment requires moral clarity. The recent move by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer highlights exactly that. And it serves as a sharp contrast to Donald Trump, who has consistently failed to stand for human rights. This is the kind of international leadership and standard that Western democracies should embrace. Unfortunately, Donald Trump has shown again and again that his administration is not guided by compassion or concern for children, despite political claims to the contrary. And as Congressman Robert Garcia highlighted in his comments on the Epstein files, Trump's record speaks for itself.
And we know that in his first days in office, Donald Trump pardoned hundreds of his followers who beat, tased, and attacked brave D.C. and U.S. Capitol Police. And right now, since we're talking about crime and corruption in D.C., as we speak, Trump is leading a White House cover-up of the Epstein files. Now, just yesterday, Trump's FBI director falsely claimed that he could not release the files, which we know is false. And let's review the facts. Epstein told the reporter that Trump was his closest friend for 10 years. One survivor also said that Epstein's biggest brag was he was very good friends with Donald Trump. In fact, there was an 8x10 picture framed of Trump on his desk. We know the two are very close. Just last week, our committee released the birthday note that Trump personally wrote to Epstein. It's right here. The note said, by the way, and I'll read it, "May every day be another wonderful secret." That's a disgusting message to send to a sex trafficker. Now, the cover-up of this note might be just as bad as the crime, since we're talking about crime in Washington, D.C. today. Trump filed a $10 billion lawsuit to punish the Wall Street Journal for reporting on the birthday book, which he claimed didn't exist. Now, of course, we've verified that to the world. Now, experts have looked at this. Of course, this is Donald Trump's signature. It certainly looks like the signature to me. At the same time, his administration is cutting deals with a criminal, Ghislaine Maxwell. We know who she is, who exactly. She's a monster who participated in crimes against up to over possibly 1,000 women. Now, Trump and our Attorney General have not turned over the full Epstein files to our committee, despite a bipartisan subpoena signed by our chairman and this committee. If we want to get tough on crime, if we want to talk about crime in D.C., we need to stand up to where the crime and corruption is happening, and that is at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and hold Donald Trump accountable for his record and his actions. It's time for the House majority and Republicans to stand up for the Constitution and take on the biggest crime happening in this country. It's time to release the Epstein files. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
This is truly one of the most hypocritical administrations in history. Donald Trump often claims that he cares about truth, justice, and the rule of law, but his record shows otherwise. Recently, he has even tried to present himself as deeply concerned about Charlie Kirk, despite the fact that he didn't attend his funeral, choosing instead to remain at his golf club. Millions of taxpayer dollars continue to flow into those properties, turning them into one of the biggest financial benefits for any president in history. But beyond that, something else deserves attention. Last night, an important moment involving Jimmy Kimmel highlighted a broader issue. There is a systematic effort by the political right to suppress dissent, silence differing opinions, and marginalize communities, especially those who simply want to live freely as who they are. The refusal to acknowledge the humanity of trans people is just one example of this. That is cancel culture in its clearest form. What is happening to Jimmy Kimmel should be seen as a test case for Donald Trump's broader political project, and we should pay close attention to how certain voices respond. When leaders like Pam Bondi announced moves against what she labeled as hate speech, we immediately saw strong pushback from figures such as Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Megyn Kelly. But let's be clear. Their concern isn't about protecting free speech. Their concern is about preserving space for discrimination. This moment reveals exactly where they stand, and it proves once again that they are not acting in good faith. On this show, we will continue to call that out directly. If you want to support that work, don't forget to like this video and hit the subscribe button. And if you made it all the way to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.